My dear brothers and sisters, today I am going to reflect on the cost of discipleship. Matthew chapter 10 verses 37 to 42. In this gospel passage from Matthew describes how Jesus is explaining to his disciples that discipleship is not a bed of roses, but it is a way of the cross, and that anyone who wishes to be his disciple needs to give up the family and all the other relationships and carry his cross and follow him. I would like to begin my reflection on the cost of discipleship with a heartwarming story of Johnson, who had to leave behind him at home his brother, who was a special child. And when he heard the call of Jesus to follow him to work in his vineyard. The story. Johnson was a very loving and caring young man during his high school days. People loved him for his love and care for the other young people and the elderly and sick persons of his village, whom he cared for lovingly and with great devotion. After Johnson got the result of his SSC exam, he was very happy, and so were the parents, relatives, and his friends for his very commendable grades in the exams. They all had thought that Johnson would attend the college after his SSC, and then, after completing his studies, would join a prestigious company, earn a lot of money and fame, and would eventually get married to a beautiful girl of his choice to establish a loving and admiring family. But to everyone's surprise, Johnson decided to join the seminary to study for priesthood because he had heard the call from God to work in his vineyard. Johnson's parents, siblings, relatives, and others tried to dissuade Johnson from joining the seminary, telling him that a bright future awaits him and therefore he needs to reconsider his decision of joining the seminary. But Johnson had made up his mind, and nothing and no one was going to prevent him from leaving his home and joining the seminary. Johnson was very fond of his younger brother, who was a special child, and Johnson had to help him in even the smallest things of life, which were needed to be done for his survival. That younger brother of Johnson had become dependent on Johnson and had become very much attached to him. He used to find it difficult to live without Johnson being around him. He used to get angry, cry loudly, and throw things out of the room whenever Johnson had to go out for some urgent work. Johnson knew very well that his younger brother, who had become so much dependent on him, would not survive even a day without him. But Johnson had to make a decision. He had heard the call from Jesus to follow him to work in his vineyard, and Johnson had made up his mind to accept that call of Jesus to follow him. So, when the time came for Johnson to leave his house to enter into the seminary, with a heavy heart, he embraced his younger brother, planted a kiss on his forehead, and with a heavy heart came out of his house. Then he looked back at his crying and wailing younger brother, and with a heavy heart and tears in his eyes, He left his house, never looking back even once till he walked far away from his house. The message of the story. The message of the story is that discipleship of Jesus is not a bed of roses, but it is a way of the cross. And that anyone who wishes to be a disciple of Jesus needs to give up the family relationships and all other relationships and carry his cross and follow him. Reference for the Patrick Stories for Biblical Reflection. Anyone who loses their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Yes, indeed, discipleship is not a bed of roses. It is a way of the cross. Accepting the call of Jesus means to give up our family and other ties for the sake of Jesus. Jesus has made it clear when he told his disciples, anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Mathew 10:37a. We need to give up our family and other ties for the sake of Jesus if we want to be his disciple. Jesus continues to explain further how following him means to give up the family and other relationships and carry his cross and follow him, saying, anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Matthew 10:17b. So, here Jesus extends the sacrifice of our relationship with our parents to our children. In actuality, what Jesus means to say is that when we accept God's call, we need to sacrifice our family relationships and all the other relationships also. We must be ready to sacrifice our family relationships and all the other relationships also if we want to be a disciple of Jesus. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Matthew 10:38. Jesus is telling his disciples that anyone who wishes to follow him will have to take up their cross and follow him, otherwise they are not worthy of him. Primarily, Jesus is telling his disciples that they have to carry their own cross and follow him in order to be his worthy disciples. Their own cross refers to all the hardships, difficulties the disciples have to bear and all the suffering they have to endure while following Jesus, so that they can be considered as his worthy disciples. And by extension, what carrying our cross refers to is all the difficulties we have to bear and all the suffering we have to endure to be the worthy disciples of Jesus. Thus, the meaning of carrying out our own cross refers to both, namely, bearing all the hardships and difficulties and enduring the suffering while following Jesus as his disciples, and it also refers to the bearing of all the hardships and difficulties and enduring all the suffering which we encounter generally in life. So in order to be worthy disciples of Jesus, we need to bear all the hardships and difficulties and endure all the suffering while following Jesus as his disciples. And also we need to bear all the hardships and difficulties and endure all the suffering which we encounter generally in our life. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life by my sake will find it. Matthew 10:39. While explaining the meaning of carrying our own cross, Jesus tells his disciples that whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life will find it. The expression finding their life here refers to persevering our life and enjoying it at any cost without giving any thought to to the sacrificial aspect involved in the discipleship of Jesus. The expression losing their life here refers to making a sacrifice of our life while accepting the call of Jesus and following Him. So when Jesus says, whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses the life for my sake will find it, what He means is that anyone who is willing to make a sacrifice of their life while accepting the call of Jesus and following Him will be pleasing God, and God will bless him abundantly. This is one of the very important aspects of the call of Jesus. We need to be willing to make a sacrifice of our life while accepting the call of Jesus and following Him. Anyone who welcomes you welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Mathew 10:40. Here Jesus assures His disciples that though it is possible that they will have to face trials, tribulations and failures while following Him, there will be some people who will welcome them into their homes and into their hearts, and they will accept the teachings of Jesus. They will accept the teachings of the followers of Jesus. This will give them hope and assurance that their efforts at preaching the good news of Jesus will not totally fall on the deaf ears, but at least some of their teaching will surely bear fruit, and that will make Jesus happy. Therefore, we need to have hope and assurance that our efforts at preaching the good news of Jesus will not totally fall on the deaf ears, but at least some of our teaching will surely bear fruit. Jesus tells His disciples, anyone who welcomes them welcomes Him, and anyone who welcomes Him welcomes the one who sent Him. Mathew 10:40. This assurance of Jesus will act as encouragement for the people to accept the disciples of Jesus and their teaching about the kingdom of God. This assurance of Jesus will also encourage and reassure the disciples of Jesus to preach the good news of the kingdom of God to as many people as possible. Therefore, we need to believe that the assurance of Jesus that anyone who welcomes them welcomes Him, and anyone who welcomes Him welcomes the one who sent Him will encourage and reassure us, and we will be able to preach the good news of the kingdom of God to as many people as possible. Whoever welcomes a prophet as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person as a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. Mathew 10:41. Here Jesus is telling the disciples that they need to give proper respect and value to the people depending on their place and value in the world. Very often we do not give proper respect to the people we come in contact with in our life, and we do not acknowledge their worth and contribution to the society. Neglecting the worth of the people is sinful, and Jesus wants us not to give in to the temptation of belittling the people we come in contact with. We need to give proper respect to the people we come in contact with and acknowledge their worth and contribution to the society, and be grateful to them for their contribution to the well-being of the people and the world we live in. And if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose their reward. Matthew 10:42. Here Jesus reassures His disciples that amidst the trials, tribulations and the suffering that they will have to endure while preaching the message of Jesus to the world, they will not be left alone to fend for themselves. There will always be some people who will be of help to them while they carry out the mission that is entrusted to them by Jesus. Jesus promises to those people that they will get their reward when God will choose to reward all those who have done the will of God in their life. At that time, those people who have given even a cup of cold water to one of the little ones who are the disciples of Jesus will get their reward. In other words, all these people who have helped the disciples of Jesus in their mission of preaching the good news of the kingdom of God will be rewarded by God. Therefore, we need to believe that all those people who have helped the disciples of Jesus in their mission of preaching the good news of the kingdom of God will be rewarded by God. We need to inspire others to understand and accept these teachings of Jesus and also inspire them to do the same to the others. Dear friends, thank you very much for watching my video and listening to my reflection with such care and love. I would be happy to hear your comments and suggestions. You may contact me on WhatsApp or by phone at 7030447934. I invite you to join my WhatsApp channel, Patrick Reflections, where I share my reflections, videos on biblical and psycho-spiritual themes, daily greetings, and selected inspiring content. Please also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Father Dr. Patrick D'Souza, and visit my website, https://worldofemotions.in, where you can safely and freely download my book Treasures of Human Personhood in